Welcome back, and as always, a delight and an honor to have with us. When we get some of his time, boy, we value it greatly. Dr. Richard Land's with us today. Again, today he's president of the Southern Evangelical Seminary. I tell you what, this is one of the great institutions, and guess what? You can earn your degree online. Just go to ses.edu, an incredible resource, ses.edu. Dr. Land, good to see you. I don't know, are you a retired airline pilot or are you just casual?
I apologize for not having on a coat and tie, but I'm the camp preacher at Camp of the Woods here in the Adirondacks in New York this week, so I'm in a little bit more casual garb.
That's good. Good to see you. I'm glad to know that. A lot to talk to you about. By the way, just give us a little insight. You were one of the members there meeting with Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. You actually now are going to end up on his advisory board. Tell us about that meeting.
Well, I wasn't in the meeting. I'm on the advisory board. They asked me to join it, and they asked me to come to the meeting, but I had a prior engagement to speak to homeschoolers and their parents at the state capitol in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I felt that I needed to keep that commitment.
So what's your role as an advisory board? What's this going to do?
Well, they told us that there are 25 of us, and we're the executive committee of a moral advisory board that's going to expand to about 500 religious leaders before the fall. And we are there to give advice and counsel to the president, to Mr. Trump and to his team, and to give them what our answers would be to the issues they face, and to give him our advice about what we think he ought to do.
I have heard from a few people that were there saying that he seems to be open and he takes in this advice. Do you feel the same?
Well, I've heard the same thing from people that I trust a great deal, that it was a very open meeting, very candid, that some of the folks that were there didn't pull any punches. They weren't ugly, but they were pretty straight talkers, straight shooters, and that evidently Mr. Trump, he appreciates that. He's a straight shooter. He wants people to shoot straight with him, and that he listened, and that he is taking it under advisement. I've had some people say to me, well, why would you do that? We did not have to endorse Mr. Trump in order to participate, and I have not endorsed Mr. Trump. But I said to some of my critics, what would you have me do? We always ask the question, what would Jesus do? I can't imagine Jesus would say, no, Mr. Trump, I'm not going to tell you what the Bible says. I'm not going to give you my advice and counsel. I'm going to go to the other side of the street and pull my robes around me and spurn you. I don't think so.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, one of the things, whether you like Trump or not, one of the things that's going to be so important with the next president of the United States is filling the vacancy, the current vacancy on the Supreme Court, and the real possibility of several others, and maybe in the first term of a new presidency. This past week, the Supreme Court, as you know, Monday, came out with its final rulings on several cases, and the one that got us most shocked was the Texas ruling and about abortion clinics. It is so mind-bending that they couldn't even see this as an issue that would literally protect women who are getting an abortion. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that at least 4 of the justices have never met an abortion they couldn't live with, as Mrs. Clinton has never met an abortion she couldn't live with, and that the right to kill an unborn baby trumps the right of the mother to have adequate health and safety protections. All this was requiring was that abortion clinics have the same standards and the same equipment that any other outpatient clinic has in the state of Texas, and that the doctors who perform the abortions have the same admitting privileges to a nearby hospital in case something goes wrong. Abortion is not routine surgery. And the fact that they voted against this is appalling. And it shows that that when it comes to the question of abortion, liberals and progressives go deaf, dumb, and blind. Now, this last week of the Supreme Court session underscored the critical importance of the federal court system and this next election, because we have the oldest Supreme Court in history. And the next president will probably get to nominate 3 or 4 Supreme Court justices, and that will determine the direction of the federal judiciary for the next 30 years. 30 years.
Yeah. Let me fast forward. If Hillary is president, what could that mean?
Well, it will mean that you'll have more justices like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and more justices that are very, very liberal. I mean, she's going to have some litmus tests, I'll guarantee you. And she's going to appoint progressive judges at the highest level and at the district level and at the appellate level. And we will have a federal judiciary that will be weaponized against our own liberties and our own freedoms. And we will be ruled by an unelected federal judiciary that acts by imperial fiat.
The danger of that is catastrophic. And what happened now on Monday with this 5-3 decision, we can look at this from a lot of directions. But overall, Dr. Land, this is a huge spiritual battle that we're in. It's the battle of deceit and lies versus the battle of common sense and truth. Do you see it that way?
Between good and evil. And, some of the other decisions, the one that they passed down that said that pharmacists do not have the right of conscience to, if they are opposed to abortion, to not prescribe the morning after pill. I mean, this is trampling on the religious freedoms and the freedoms of conscience that are guaranteed to us. You know, the First Amendment is there in order to protect religious freedom. The other freedoms, the freedom of the press, the freedom of assembly, the freedom to peaceful redress agreements, are all subordinate rights to the right of freedom of religion, the right to freedom of conscience.
All right, so where do you think we are? I mean, there's a pushback in the world. I mean, we saw England now want to come out of the EU. We see much of Trump's success as a result of a pushback of America from the establishment. Where do you see the church in this pushback?
Well, I think that the evangelical church, the conservative church, is moving in the same direction of distrusting and eschewing the elites who give every indication of existing for their own self-preservation and for their own good and not for the people who elected them. In Britain, you had virtually every elite in the country. You had all three major parties supporting staying in. And yet the people said, we've had it, we're out of here. There's a real revolt going on, a rebellion going on in the United States and in many other parts of the world. And it's a fault line running through our society between those people who are traditionalists and believe in traditional values and believe that some things are always wrong and some things are always right, and those who are postmodernists and who think everything's relative. And the fascinating thing is that fault line does not run between the institutions in American society. It runs through them. It runs through the Republican Party. It runs through the Democratic Party. It runs through the major denominations. It runs through the educational institutions. It runs through the governmental institutions. So you've got Republicans who are going to vote for Hillary Clinton because they're establishment, she's establishment, and they want to preserve their power. We got a lot. We're finding out that a lot of Republicans are wolves in Republican clothing. And I think this election is going to be very, very difficult to predict because what we've got is a whirlpool. You can't discern different currents in a whirlpool. We got a whirlpool that is going to make it so that none of the previous lessons and none of the previous experience applies. For instance, the part of Britain that won the election to go out were Northern Ireland, Northern England, and Central England, and Wales, which are the parts of the United Kingdom that look like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Ohio, the Rust Belt. And so what that tells me is Donald Trump might carry Pennsylvania. Donald Trump might carry Michigan. Donald Trump might carry Ohio. Donald Trump might carry New Jersey. Well, if that happens, then all of the electoral predictions are off, and it's a whole new ballgame.
Wow. Let me take a break here. I want to come back and deal with this. Do you think God is involved in this unconventional, unusual election cycle. It's not only showing up in the United States, it's showing up in Europe. Is God stirring the world? We'll be right back with Dr. Richard Land.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
What a delight to have back with us today Dr. Richard Land. He's the president of the Southern Evangelical Seminary, one of the great apologetic seminaries in our country. And by the way, you can enroll by going to ses.edu. You can actually earn your degree online. Tell us about that quickly, Dr. Land.
Well, you can. We offer all of our classes at night. Many of them are live streaming. We offer 4 every weeknight. I have a son-in-law who just graduated. He has a full-time job in a bank in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And in 3 years, he finished a 2-year Master of Arts in Apologetics degree and is now going into our PhD program. He did the whole thing online.
Wonderful. All right. It's SES, that stands for Southern Evangelical Seminary, .edu. And by the way, when you're on that website, keep it handy because they sponsor an apologetics conference coming up in the fall, and it's one of the great ones you must attend. When is that set for? October 14th
and 15th, and just go to ses.edu and you can get information about it. It's really fantastic. We're going to have Jay Sekulow this year. We're going to have Jay Warner Wallace, Dr. Norm Geister, who we have every year, and Gary Habermas and Frank Turek, all kinds of people. And the theme is the defense never rests.
Amen for that one. All right. Do you think it's possible that all of this upstirring and everything else, that there is a God element to it?
Well, there certainly may very well be. God is certainly involved in the affairs of men. But unlike some commentators, I read the Bible and it says that no man knows the mind of God. And no man knows what he's doing. So I don't assume that I know what God is doing. I do believe personally that America is under the judgment of God, that what's happening to us is happening to us because we have, among other things, we have practiced child sacrifice and we have killed about 57 million American babies since 1973. But I also believe that we may very well be seeing a stirring of God's people that will lead to a revival that will ripen into an awakening and will culminate in the Reformation. That's certainly my promise. That's certainly my hope and my belief. But let me just remind you what Francis Schaeffer said in 1984, about a month before he died from cancer. He was at Liberty University and he was asked by a student, Dr. Schaeffer, it looks like the Christian faith, Christian church, it's in the 10th round and we're about to be knocked out. Is there any hope that we can win? Dr. Schaeffer, in his frail condition, leaned into the microphone and said, son, if you do it to win, you've already lost. We do it to be faithful because God's commanded us to be salt and light. We leave the results to God.
Very well said. Wow. It's been said in numerous commentaries that the two issues that could possibly return God's blessing to America would be to stop the killing of the unborn and to fully embrace the security and the relationship with Israel. As you sit on this advisory board with Trump, how do you feel about those two issues and where he may be?
Well, I'm pleased that he says he's pro-life. I want to hear more. He's certainly more pro-life than Hillary Clinton. It's pretty hard to be less pro-life than Mrs. Clinton. She's made it very clear there's never been an abortion, even a partial birth abortion, that she couldn't live with. When it comes to Israel, I like some of his more recent statements on Israel. I'm certainly going to be telling him that God blesses those who bless the Jews and God curses those who curse the Jews. And I want God to bless America. And if God is going to bless America, then one of the best ways to make certain that happens is to bless the Jews and to support Israel's right to exist in the land that God gave them. I think there are other issues. God's not going to bless us as a nation as long as we so completely embraced the sexual revolution, including same-sex marriage, including transgender perversity as being normal.
Right. Amen to that. And by the way, that's spreading like wildfire. Well, so often when these things get out of the gate the way they are, one of the questions is, can we really turn them back? Donald Trump has said, well, hey, when I get in office, one of the first things I'm going to do is stop Obamacare and come up with another plan. I mean, what can we do to reset biblical gender identity? What can we do to reset the sanctity of life? I mean, how do we do that?
It's not going to be done without a revival among God's people that is followed by an awakening where a lot of lost people get saved. Our problems are too big for us to solve them. The problems aren't going to be solved in Washington. Washington's a caboose. The people are the locomotive. When the people change, the government will change. All that Donald Trump could do would be to fight a delaying action, to minimize the damage, to try to hold back the deluge until God's people get right with God. And when, Second Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people, that's the Christians, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and forgive their sin and heal their land. There's some divine tipping point when enough Christians get right with God that God's going to lean over from heaven and pour out a heal the land kind of blessing on the just and the unjust alike and on the United States of America. And that's what we must have.
Very well said.
It culminates in a reformation.
One other question. I want to lean back onto your president of the seminary shoulders just for a moment. When we survey people that listen and watch what we do here on the Dove radio and TV network, and last month, well, actually over the last several months, we've been averaging well over 100,000 YouTube downloads. And when we begin to look into that, the number one topic across the board, Dr. Land, is apologetics. I find this interesting and yet soothing, but a lot of Christians are even coming up with, what is it that I really believe? Do I really know what I really believe? So there seems to be a genuine interest in how we defend the Christian faith in this marketplace.
People are more and more aware. Well, I think you're right. I mean, people are more and more aware that we live in a post-Christian culture where traditional faith is under assault. And so they're hungry for defense. They're hungry for the defenses. They're hungry to be able to have the information, to answer the questions, and to defend themselves, and to successfully defeat secular and worldly arguments. And that's why we're here at SES.
Well, I just want to say to our viewers and listeners, go to ses.edu is their website where they're for the Southern Evangelical Seminary. As Dr. Land says, you can take the courses online. You say they're evening classes, right? Classes, Dr. Land?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Most of your classes that are online are at night?
They are, and we're cheap, too. It's for a bachelor's degree, it's $750 a course, not an hour. And for a master's degree, it's $1,000 a course, not an hour. And for a doctoral program, it's $1,250 a course, not an hour. And the reason we do that is that we want to make it available to anybody who wants to study. What is a course? What constitutes a course? It's a 3-hour, just a regular 3-hour course. If you take one at night during the fall semester, you would take it for 3 hours a night. I think it's for 16 weeks. It would be on a Tuesday night for 16 weeks, from 6 to 9 Central Time. And you just do the coursework and complete the coursework, and you interact with the professor, and you take the test, and you get 3 hours college credit or 3 hours master's credit.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Land. Enjoy your time off there and away, but let's look forward to many connections in the future. I think we're heading into some very interesting times. As you know, Franklin Graham is going around to all 50 state capitals. He was just here in Oregon this past week. And by the way, we had the largest turnout of people at the state capitol park. Just happened to be a prayer meeting. Doesn't that tell you something?
Well, it does, especially in Oregon, which, as you know, is the least churched state in the country. Only 9% of Oregonians claim any affiliation with any church, mosque, synagogue, or temple. So that's really impressive.
Yeah, it really is. That's why we're here. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you again.
God bless.
God bless you. All right, again, let me just say to you, you can go to ses.edu. That is their website. It's an incredible resource for you, and check out all the courses, as he said, online. So instead of paying a unit price or so much a credit price, they have rearranged their the way you can take the classes through the courses. And again, that's ses.edu. And let me just say in closing today, join us tomorrow here on Focus Today. Our good friend, Dr. Marshall Foster, who's the president of the World History Institute, another great Christian historian in our country, who does, by the way, Christian history tours. Will take you from Plymouth Rock all the way down to Yorktown and go through the Capitol and Monticello and all of those places. He'll be with us live in the studio tomorrow. We look forward to having him going into this 4th of July weekend. And let me encourage you again, just think about this, just think about it. Why don't you get a copy of the Declaration of Independence and read it? Read it. Turn this not into a holiday of just fun things to do and fireworks. Turn this into really a spiritual gathering for yourself, maybe your family, and thanking God for men and women who gave their all that we may be free today. And but read the Declaration of Independence. You may want to read the Bill of Rights. You may want to read the Mayflower Compact, but read those documents. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.